are a combined 10-8. That's good for a 55% winning percentage. Pittsburgh's Mike Tomlin is the only one of the black head coaches still undefeated. The Steelers are 3-0. Houston's DeMeco Ryan and Tampa Bay's Todd Bowles are 2-1. New England's Gerard Mayo, Atlanta's Raheem Morris, and Antonio Pierce of the Las Vegas Raiders are all 1-2. With Hurricane Helene bearing down on northern Florida, Florida A&M's home game Saturday against Alabama A&M was rescheduled for Friday, November 29th. The Florida A&M campus is in Tallahassee. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money Talk.
Here's what happens when you advertise on KBLA Talk 1580.
3, possibly 4 weeks ago, I heard an advertisement on your radio station from a company called Grid Solar. I would love to have that phone number so I can reach out to them with reference to solar panels being installed on my property.
Our listeners are aware and engaged, but more than that, they are loyal. When they hear empowering messages that uplift their community and help them live better lives, they respond. No medium reaches this coveted black audience like KBLA Talk 1580. So, hit us up today at smb@kbla1580.com and let us help you connect with our loyal listeners. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black under the bud.
Live from historic Limerick Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavissmileyshow.com. That's thetavissmileyshow.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, 2 conversations. Up first, ProPublica investigative reporter Jessica Lussenhop takes a deeper look at how Governor Tim Walz handled police killings and civil unrest in Minnesota after the murder of George Floyd. You know, it didn't stop there, right? George Floyd becomes an international story, but it didn't stop with him, sadly. And so her report digs into how the governor handled police killings and civil unrest in Minnesota after the murder of George Floyd. We'll do that at the top of hour 2. On the B side of hour 2, the co-founder of the Initiative for Energy Justice, Subin Devar, talks about the work of IEJ and the role that energy justice plays in the movement for climate change as part of our year-long and continuing series on climate justice, climate equity, and climate resilience, certainly for our community. In our third hour,
Earth take 1 year to circle around sun. It'll keep going. It'll never stop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see my dad. I don't remember nothing about my father. Okay, nothing at all.
These girls just needed a way to invite their fathers into their lives. on their own terms.
My daughter was born when I was in prison. I had to see her through a glass. Couldn't kiss her, couldn't hold her. My mother was incarcerated, paid 10 years. It's like, damn, man, my daughter going through the same thing that I've been through.
It's not okay. It's affecting me. I'm just getting older and won't be here to see them memories.
One girl said, my dad can't come to the dance because he's in jail. And one girl suggested, why don't we just take the dance in the jail?
You guys, it's a golden opportunity to see your daughters and spend time with them. But I'm gonna be very honest with you guys. It's gonna be an emotional roller coaster for you.
I liked it. When I can touch them, it's like nothing else on earth.
How memories are formed by kids. This is for life.
Love you.
Love you too. I'll always be here for you.
It is one of the most powerful documentaries I've seen in a long time. I love documentaries. I'm that guy. But this is one of the best. The CEO of Girls for a Change, Angela Patton, and filmmaker Natalie Ray join us in hour 3 to talk about their new award-winning Netflix documentary. It's called Daughters, and as you can tell, it examines the relationship between incarcerated fathers and their daughters, and it will make you laugh, it will make you cry, it will make you think, but I've rarely seen anything that moved me the way that this documentary called Daughters, about these precious black babies being reunited with their fathers at a dance. The fathers couldn't come to their daddy dance, so they took it inside the prison. And Lord Jesus, when you see this documentary, it's an amazing piece of work. So I'm excited to have the filmmakers join us for the entire third hour today to talk about this documentary called Daughters. But in this first hour, here's the question. What do disaffected Republicans, black Republicans, do if they refuse to vote for Donald Trump? There are a growing number of never-Trumpers in this country, as you well know, but I am particularly curious as to what black Republicans do if they refuse to vote for Donald Trump. We all know the drama surrounding Mark Robinson, not surrounding him. He's at the epicenter. He started this mess. So Mark Robinson's got his drama. You'll all recall the very first night of the Republican National Convention. I called it Negro Night. Every black person in the Republican Party, they rounded up and put them on stage in Milwaukee on the first night of the RNC. But what about those black Republicans who refuse to vote for Donald Trump? What do they do? Is Kamala Harris an option? She is a black one. Well, when we come forward, a conversation with John Wood Jr., National Ambassador for the organization Braver Angels, but he's also a contributing writer for USA Today. He has a piece out, just dropped yesterday, and the piece is titled, I'm a Republican, and I can't vote for Harris or Trump. I'm voting for Cornel West. I'm a Republican, and I can't vote for Harris or Trump. I'm voting for Cornel West. And then he goes on to make the claim that he probably has less in common with Cornel West than anybody else running. And yet, as a black Republican, you've heard Cornel West's critique. You've heard his commentary on this program and elsewhere. Why would a black Republican vote for Cornel West? What is that about? Over Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? It's a provocative piece. You can Google it right now in USA Today. But the author of that piece, John Wood Jr., is in studio right now. We'll jump right into this when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening.
Charitable listening.
It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward. Tavis Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition with powerful new contributions from today's leading voices. This 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Looking for a purposeful and passionate way to make a difference in your community? Volunteer with our Senior Medicare Patrol and help prevent Medicare fraud. S&P volunteers work in their community educating peers about healthcare fraud and how to prevent and detect it. Free training starts soon. Check us out online or at an S&P open house near you. We're on a mission to stop fraud. Join our team. You make a difference. Visit ca-smp-volunteer.org.
As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust new Febreze car vent clips, now with 3 times greater scent control, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with new Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing, which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up Oscar!
My friends swim no matter the season, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can sometimes take me out of the moment. Now, thanks to Skyrizi and clear skin, count me in. With Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
Freedom is an endless meeting, so let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and John Wood Jr., author of the piece, I'm a Republican, and I can't vote for Harris or Trump. I'm voting for Cornel West. The piece is in USA Today. Read it for yourself. He goes into great detail, but I'm glad to have John in studio to unpack it for us right now. We will get later in this hour to one of the biggest news stories of the day. As you probably have already heard, the mayor of New York City. We have been fortunate for some years now to have African-American mayors leading most of America's major cities, certainly the top 4 or 5, in L.A., in New York, in Chicago, in Philly, recently in Houston. So these African-American mayors have played an outsized role in navigating these municipalities. And Eric Adams has now been indicted in the city of New York, and the calls are growing at this hour. This program is heard in New York, and so we are monitoring this because the calls are growing at this hour for Eric Adams, the black mayor of New York City, only the second black mayor. Of course, David Dinkins was the first. So L.A. and New York have that in common. Both have had black mayors twice, Tom Bradley and Karen Bass in L.A., David Dinkins, now Eric Adams in New York City, and there are calls that are growing from AOC across the board, calling on Mayor Eric Adams to step down immediately. So we will see how much longer he survives this. But I'll just say this before we get to this with John, perhaps later in this hour. I was thinking last night, and this is the part that troubles me. I'm not one that doesn't believe in holding black folk accountable. I think you know that. I caught a lot of hell during the Obama years trying to hold him accountable. So I believe in accountability. But you have to ask yourself, how is it in the history of the city of New York and all of the corruption in the city of New York, Eric Adams is the first mayor to ever be arrested and indicted in office? I mean, don't forget now, Rudy Giuliani was mayor of New York City. And you know what his drama is all about today. But it is interesting. You think of all those mayors, and the first time in the history of New York City, with all that corruption, the first mayor to be indicted as mayor is Eric Adams. I digress on that for now. We'll get to that perhaps later in this hour. I just wanted you to know that I'm aware that this story is out there, even as we talk about this piece. And you said today, I'm a Republican. I can't vote for Harris or Trump. I'm voting for Cornel West. The author, John Wood Jr., joins us right now. John, how are you today, sir?
Tavis, I'm doing well, man, and it's great to be in studio.
It's good to have you in studio with us.
Yeah.
We'll talk about some more of your work as we move through this hour, but it's this piece that got my attention yesterday. The minute I saw it pop into my phone as an alert, I was on the air, as a matter of fact, and went to commercial break at one point and sat here and read it as quickly as I could and delved more deeply into it last night in preparation for our conversation. So let me stop talking and give the microphone to you. I got a lot of questions, of course, but I want to just give you a few minutes here first just to lay the groundwork as succinctly as you can for how you came as a black Republican to this decision, and we'll jump from there.
Well, I mean, there's a collective identity argument to be made for any number of things. As a black man, as a Republican, I mean, I could say that Cornel West is a pivotal figure as somebody who's been an eloquent expositor of not just the black experience, but the black struggle. I could say that not so much as a Republican per se, but as somebody who thinks of himself as philosophically conservative. I've got a deep affinity for sort of the broader Western tradition. That shouldn't be a partisan issue, but in today's context, there's a way in which a focus on classical Western heritage and whatnot can seem to be the province of white people. It shouldn't be that way. And part of the reason it shouldn't be that way is the fact that one of the most eloquent expositors of that Western tradition is also Cornel West. So, you might say that I can come at it from both of those angles, but ultimately it is an individual decision made on two principal bases. Number one, as much as people want to call it a wasted vote, it is a pragmatic decision insofar as in a context where I'm in the state of California. My vote isn't swinging anything one way or the other anyway. But wherever possible, you have to take a stand for the politics you want to see, even as you're having to deal with the politics as they exist in the here and now. And if people who can afford to do so aren't willing to cast votes of conscience for independent candidates who might be able to widen the moral and material boundaries of our political conversations, there's not going to be any ground to build on for the next go round. And so we're left always choosing between a quick death and a slow death, depending on who's running for the major party tickets. And beyond that, Tavis, I've dedicated my life and career as a nominee for Congress 10 years ago, 7 years of leading Braver Angels in this project of building up the beloved community across political and racial lines, trying to make space for the spirit of agape love to center the dialogue in American politics. And when I look across the landscape of major American figures, I can see nobody in the presidential arena or otherwise embody that value and that spirit of agape love and the fire of Dr. King more eloquently or fiercely or earnestly than Professor West.
You and I have had this conversation many times, and I wish we had the time just to spend a few hours reprising or even continuing our dialogue about King. Before I get back to Dr. West, though, because if Dr. West were here, he would tell you, and you know this already, he would agree with me. Our assessment is that King is the greatest American this country has ever produced. So King, Dr. West and I rather, have a way of looking at the world through the lens of Martin King. So when you come to Dr. West, or you come to me, or others for that matter, seeking our support, my question is, tell me what your connection is to the legacy of King.
That's right.
Tell me what your work and witness has to do with making the world safe for the legacy of Martin King. For me, that means justice for all, service to others, and a love that liberates people. Justice for all, service to others, and a love that liberates people. So I have my way of seeing the world through a Kingian lens. It's not always the case, though, that black Republicans see the world through a Kingian lens as you do. It's one of the things I admire and respect about you. You think, for example, of the prior mentioned Mark Robinson, who had the nerve to say that Dr. King was worse than a maggot. That's a quote from Mark Robinson, a black Republican running for governor.
Don't forget the Donald Trump quote. The Mark Robinson is Martin Luther King times 2.
Exactly. You see this?
that was about the funniest thing I've heard this whole election. But I couldn't even be mad. I was like, he's clearly making a joke.
But to compare Dr. King to a maggot and call Dr. King worse than a maggot, I mean, you talk about that. That's beyond sycophancy. You're willing to do and say anything to appeal to these base white voters. I'll leave that alone for now. My point is that you have a uniquely different way of seeing the world as a black Republican through the lens of King. Tell me about that part quickly.
Yeah, well, there is an implicit tension, I think, in the Democratic project between, on the one hand, conducting yourself in a way that invites in sort of the good faith opposition of the other side, while on the other hand, being willing to make people uncomfortable in the project of speaking the moral and material truth, such as you see it. Most of us can only do one thing or the other. Most of us, if we're speaking the truth, we're breaking relationships, or we're preserving the relationships by not fully articulating the truth. And what Dr. King was able to demonstrate in a way that changed America and the way that changed the world is that you can fully and forcefully speak the moral truth while still loving not just your neighbor, but your enemy, right? Pushing the conscience of society forward in a way that pushes society forward while also maintaining the potential for reconciliation with those whom you have to challenge. That is the ultimate mark of moral maturity, the ultimate mark of leadership maturity. And it is something that in substance is exposited through the actual substance of Dr. King's philosophy, which is something right, left, and center we have lost our familiarity with in modern America. And so that has inspired me in my political work. It has inspired me in my civic work, trying to create space for people to come together across the table, across the divide. And it's what I think America needs.
So tell me, just me and you, nobody listening.
Okay, got it.
All across the country, just you and me in this conversation right now.
Yeah.
Who have you gotten more grief from? I think you'll take my point. Republicans or Democrats for this piece that you can't support Harris or Trump, you're supporting Cornel West, independent for president. Who have you got more grief from, Republicans or Democrats?
Well, I've got a little grief from both. I've definitely heard from some Republicans who say, like, John Wood Jr. ain't a real Republican. He's not a real conservative. Rhino, this, that, or the other. Should be voting for Trump. Most of the grief I've gotten, however, has come from Democrats.
Wow. Hold up. You are a black Republican who's announced you're supporting Cornel West, but most of the grief you've gotten has come from Democrats.
Maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but honestly, I was a little surprised.
Unpack that
I
for
kind
me.
of thought Democrats would be just happy that I wasn't voting for Trump.
Yeah.
But what a lot of folks have been saying is like, oh, so you found a way to vote for Trump anyway. Because they see a vote for Cornel West as being a vote stolen from Kamala Harris. Never mind the fact that I don't see how I can steal something from myself that belongs to me. You know, my vote is my own.
That's right. That's right.
I wasn't never going to vote for Donald Trump, and I was never likely to vote for Kamala Harris either. I prefer to vote for something, right? Now, look, I say that with a great deal of humility and deference at the same time to the very valid and legitimate reasons people have for voting for Kamala Harris, certainly in the present context. And by the way, people who earnestly believe in Donald Trump have their reasons that are deeply persuasive to them, too. I have to appreciate the reality of people's subjective experiences, so I don't judge anybody else for their decisions. But it is remarkable how quick other people are to judge a person like me for mine. Like I said earlier, Tavis, a vote is not just something that is a tally towards a material outcome in a given election. That's part of it. But a vote also symbolizes the sort of society that you want to see, the sort of society we need to build towards. And I do believe that we are caught in a bit of a death spiral in this country, choosing between the lesser of two evils as if that's the pathway towards making the space for a greater good. It is not always so. A lot of times what you do is you get caught in a paradigm of false choices in a way that commits the trajectory of society to choosing between diminishing goods more and more over time. And frankly, that's what I think we have with the modern day Democratic and Republican parties.
You and I agree on this point. I do not believe that we are necessarily in an election where we have binary choices. That is the frame that people want to put us in. That is the prevailing narrative. I just don't buy that, that we are stuck with binary choices, because if that's the way you see the world, then we will never get out of this corporate duopoly, this political duopoly that we are stuck, quite frankly, inside of. But tell me quickly how you in writing this piece or coming to this decision before you wrote the piece navigated this how can I put it, this tricky terrain that Democrats have brought to your attention, of course, in their critique of voting your conscience on the one hand, but perhaps opening the door to the existential threat of Donald Trump on the other hand. How have you navigated that tightrope, as it were?
Well, look, I mean, there's a degree to which I see the fundamental problem in American society as preceding Trump, even as Donald Trump represents a critical inflection point along this trajectory. What I mean by that, Tavis, is simply this. American society exists at the impasse of what appear at least to be irreconcilable interests and irreconcilable identities. We live in an era of culture war where the American people themselves have natural and organic divisions between them, how we see matters of race, how we see matters of American history, again, how we see matters of identity, religion, and these organic divisions find their ways into being weaponized by the political parties in ways that corrupt the media, in ways that corrupt the economy, in ways that allow the financial sector to sort of make puppets out of the politicians. Donald Trump, to his credit, I think, has shaken up that system. To his discredit, he's managed to make it his own fiefdom, one half of it, right? And so I see the existential threat there. I just don't see where the Democratic Party, in this current iteration, as led by Kamala Harris, represents an antidote to that pre-existing condition of deep moral division and deep moral corruption in the system itself. So if you're trying to put a Band-Aid on the Trump problem, you may do it with Kamala Harris, but you're still going to have a Congress that doesn't function. You're still going to have institutions that are not trusted by the American public. You're still going to have a media that people don't believe. You're still going to have an economy that's not going to be able to function the way it needs to because you need bipartisan consensus to get anything done unless she eliminates the filibuster, in which case you have a whole new set of problems. And we could go deeper into Kamala Harris if you like, but she's not a person who I think has a great deal of credibility with most Americans up until this point. What that leaves me to conclude is that, particularly voting in the state of California, my best efforts as somebody who seeks to bring the American people together earnestly is spent in supporting a candidate who is willing to speak a moral language that has the capacity to begin to reset the tone and tenor of our politics, challenge the duopolistic paradigm that we're in, and establish a new moral frame for how we talk about this divide. I think Cornel West is the one person who thinks in those terms.
It occurs to me as we talk that you aren't the only person that could come to the same conclusion that you've arrived at. In California, in New York, we could run the list. While the conversation these days is perennially about these 7 swing states that everybody's focused on, that leaves, I wasn't a math major, 50 minus 7, whatever that number is, that leaves, 43 other states where people can safely vote this way or the other way. What I mean by that is that you're not the only person in California who could decide to vote his or her conscience and vote for Cornel West and not do any damage to Kamala Harris. That is true in California. It's true in New York. It's true in any number of blue states. I wonder whether or not the piece that you've written for USA Today will resonate then with other voters who will hear your argument and understand even more so that in certain places you can vote for Cornel West. You can vote for an independent without causing any damage to Kamala Harris. And so those Democrats who just reflexively jumped on you for wasting a vote don't really understand the calculus. We'll come back to that and a great deal more when we come forward. Our guest is John Wood Jr., National Ambassador for Braver Angels, an amazing organization. I had the honor to speak for them a couple years ago in Gettysburg.
Yes, sir. That's right. Gettysburg.
My very first time in Gettysburg, speaking at the Braver Angels National Convention. But his piece is called "I'm a Republican, and I Can't Vote for Harris or Trump. I'm voting for Cornel West." We'll interrogate that a bit more when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say "when we come forward"?
Because he's not going back.
And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Officials say it's time to prepare now as Hurricane Helene is forecast to make landfall in Florida's Big Bend region later today as a Category 4 storm. Helene is expected to bring life-threatening storm surge, damaging winds and flooding to much of the Sunshine State and the southeastern U.S. Vice President Harris is set to make her first trip to the southern border since becoming the Democratic nominee for president. Harris will visit Douglas, Arizona on Friday as polling numbers show immigration and border security are weak points in her campaign. Some 300 people are out of a job at Disney Global and more cuts are expected. A spokesman said the layoffs were in the name of efficiency. All of the layoffs announced this week were in the U.S. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Blindster is a family-run business that began in 2010, and we've sold millions of custom blinds, shades, and shutters and received over 100,000 five-star reviews. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
Is this the tackle? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers bounced back against the San Diego Padres. They held on for a 4-3 win, 2 RBIs for Shohei Ohtani. The Dodgers can clinch their 4th straight NL West Division title tonight with a win over the Padres. Week 4 of the NFL regular season kicks off tonight with the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Giants. The NFL's 6 black head coaches are a combined 10-8. That's good for a 55% winning percentage. Pittsburgh's Mike Tomlin is the only one of the black head coaches still undefeated. The Steelers are 3-0. Houston's D'Amico Ryan and Tampa Bay's Todd Bowles are 2-1. New England's Gerard Mayo, Atlanta's Raheem Morris, and Antonio Pierce of the Las Vegas Raiders are all 1-2. With Hurricane Helene bearing down on northern Florida, Florida A&M's home game Saturday against Alabama A&M was rescheduled for Friday, November 29th. The Florida A&M campus is in Tallahassee. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Progressive makes bundling easy and affordable. Get a multi-policy discount by combining your car, home, motorcycle, commercial auto, and more. All your protection in one place. Bundle and save at Progressive.com.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks VapoStick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks vapors in an easy-to-apply stick. And it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks VapoStick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And when you need more comfort for yourself, try Vicks Vapo Shower Max for steamy Vicks vapors. Use as directed. VapoStick for use ages 4 and up. Vapo Shower Max use for adults only.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer whenever I want? Can we sleep cooler? Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. 94% of Sleep Number smart sleepers report better sleep. J.D. Power ranks Sleep Number #1 in customer satisfaction with mattresses purchased in-store. And now, during our biggest sale of the year, save 50% on the Sleep Number Limited Edition smart bed. Limited time. For J.D. Power 2023 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. To find a store near you, visit sleepnumber.com.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Sweet chocolate reward. Sweet chocolate reward.
This is not just the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat at Walgreens. This is the sound of someone picking up a sweet treat right after receiving all their vaccines in one trip. This is the sound of treating yourself, because you protected yourself.
Stop by or schedule both your flu and COVID-19 vaccines today and grab yourself a sweet treat while you're at it. Vaccine subject to availability. State, age, and health-related restrictions may apply.
Point! Hey, you okay? You don't normally miss those shots.
Oh, I just haven't been as regular lately, and it's making me feel sluggish.
You should try Metamucil. It's been a game changer for me. Metamucil's plant-based psyllium fiber helps trap and remove the waste that weighs you down. Ace, you're moving better than you were last week.
Definitely.
Metamucil keeps you moving. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Learn more at metamucil.com.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in. But we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with John Wood Jr. He is the national ambassador for a fine organization called Braver Angels. He is the author of a piece as a contributing writer for USA Today. It's a powerful piece out that everybody's talking about. Big headline: I'm a Republican. I can't vote for Harris or Trump. I'm voting for Cornel West, and I'm trying to understand all this. Even as a friend of Dr. West, I'm trying to understand how this black Republican came to the conclusion that Cornel West was going to be his choice. I want to come back to this notion of a wasted vote and how there are other people, I think, around the country who will read your piece, certainly in blue states, and realize that there is a way for them to vote their conscience. Because for me, that's the ultimate. Being able to go into a booth, or if you vote, absentee, by mail, however you vote, but being able to vote your conscience. For me, that is the ultimate, right? And so I'm glad you found a way to do that. I will find a way to do that on November 5, to vote my conscience. Here's a quick story, though. As I mentioned, and you already know this, Cornel West is a friend of mine. We were both in Chicago. I was there covering the Democratic Convention, doing my show live every day, as this audience knows. Dr. West was in town campaigning, so because we're friends, we saw each other pretty much every day for dinner, typically at the end of our day, to kind of just check in with each other. And so on the last day of the convention, he came on my show. So, which means he had to come inside the United Center. You see the picture here, right?
Sure.
It's the Democratic National Convention. Cornel West is running against your nominee as an independent, and he's walking into your party. He's crashing your party. But he couldn't be on the show if he didn't come inside the building to my booth where I was, and you know where I'm going with this. When he and I pulled up in that car and got out to walk the mile and a half to get ultimately to our booth, say nothing of when we were leaving and the crowd had grown exponentially. I mean, we couldn't move for all these Democrats jockeying to take a photo with Dr. West, and not just the photo, that's prima facie, but to hear what they had to say to him, thanking him for speaking truth to power and to the powerless. I saw it in Chicago inside the United Center at the Democratic Convention. I've been elsewhere with him since he announced he was running, and it's the same thing. All these Democrats running up to him, thanking him for all his years of, again, being a truth teller and a justice warrior. And so my point is that I know, not what I heard, from what I've seen, that if they were voting their conscience, Cornel West might get their vote. But there's something about this binary that we're inside of, something about this existential threat, something about something that doesn't allow us, even in states where we can, to vote our conscience. Let me shut up. What do you make of that?
Well, look, I mean, I think that people are afraid, And I think that people are afraid of the possibility of a Trump re-election. Some people are excited about Kamala Harris, too. That I understand. But I think that there's probably an equal or greater sense of fear. And when people are afraid, the social pressure to conform to whatever the most sort of immediate and direct pathway is available to counteracting that fear, it becomes a tremendous social force, pushing people not to think in terms of conscience, but in terms of survival. And so I think that that's part of what you have here. But I do encourage folks to take the long view. You have to cultivate the constituency and the political terrain, and particularly in the places where it is safe and feasible to do so in ways that do not counteract your material interests, to establish a political foundation for coming back around the next time and saying, yes, we have a Democratic nominee. Perhaps now you have a Democratic president in Kamala Harris, and that has been accomplished, but there is still a deeper, more moral, transcendent, and if you like, progressive politics that we want to take a stand for, symbolized in the campaign of Professor West, and we're showing the Democratic and the Republican parties that there's momentum behind that sort of a budding movement. You can't do that if you're not willing to cast a ballot demonstrating that in the places where you can.
But what you're telling me, though, is that Dick Cheney, Dick Cheney has found a way to say publicly he's voting for Kamala Harris with hundreds of other Republicans, indeed those who worked in the Trump administration. There are tons of, I wouldn't say tons, there are a lot of Republicans for Kamala Harris, but you couldn't get there. Dick Cheney could, but you couldn't.
Well, that's an interesting way to set it up. Look, I don't know Dick Cheney, and I would never call myself a Dick Cheney Republican. David French is a friend of mine. Sure. David Brooks is a friend of mine. Russell Moore. I mean, there are a lot of Republicans who are noble and thoughtful people who are casting their vote for Kamala Harris as a reflection of their conscience because they can't support Donald Trump. And so I respect that choice for Republicans or for Democrats. It's the motive behind your choice that wins my admiration or my concern. But I still make the argument that ultimately we are locked in a bipartisan problem at the moment. And it's not so much the reality of us only having two parties as much as it is the reality of us having two parties that are locked in a downwardly spiraling set of incentives that ensure that the American people will remain divided even as some of the most pressing questions of material well-being and moral justice remain unsolved. And so we have to break out of that. And so what is the strategy for breaking out of that, if not lending some measure of support to the one candidate in the race who is casting a vision for doing precisely that and who has a history of standing on that sort of cause?
Speaking of independent candidates for president, how did you read RFK Jr., his endorsement of Donald Trump?
Well, that was an interesting thing, and I do write about that a little bit in my USA Today piece. I do respect Robert Kennedy Jr. He says some things that are maybe a little bit out there.
You're being charitable and generous, but I digress. Go ahead.
Well, I do think that he's a principled individual. I mean, I said it in the piece. I think the third party candidates in this race are much more substantial than the major party candidates. But I get the sense that while Robert Kennedy delivered a fairly compelling indictment of the Democratic Party establishment that he believes, and I tend to agree with him, operates in a way so as to not just minimize but disenfranchise competition from within the Democratic Party sphere. I mean, you can look at Bernie Sanders, you can look at Cornel West, et cetera, that ultimately he delivered a compelling indictment of the Democratic side without even taking a look at the sins and faults of the Republican side under Donald Trump. And I think he did that. My speculation is just that I think that he's personally feels a sense of betrayal and woundedness from the Democratic Party given his historic relationship to it. And so he makes a lot of good points, but I'm not persuaded by him that the answer is to then support Donald Trump just as I'm not particularly persuaded that the long-term solution for Trumpism or whatever's at the root of it is simply casting a vote for Harris.
When we come forward, we will get John Wood Jr.'s take since he's here, and this news is breaking literally as we speak. We'll try to make some sense, the two of us will, of Eric Adams' situation in New York City. The mayor of New York has been indicted. As I said moments ago, for me, it's hard to wrap my brain around what I know and have studied for years. All these mayors in New York City and all the corruption in New York, and he's the first one to ever be indicted as mayor. It's hard to kind of understand that, and yet, if we believe in accountability and he is guilty of what he's alleged to have done, then you got to pay the piper. Yeah. But the calls for his resignation are growing literally by the hour as John Wood Jr. and I sit here for this conversation. So we'll try to make some sense of that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
So you may have heard of Project 2025. A plan crafted by Trump and his MAGA loyalists to give Trump virtually unchecked political power and take Black America backwards. Here's how. Project 2025 strips away our voting rights protections, and it eliminates the Department of Education. It would siphon public school funding to private schools, leaving our kids behind. Planning on going to college? Good luck paying for it. Project 2025 cuts funding for federal student loans. Trump's Project 2025 would also make states monitor women's pregnancies, and it bans abortion. Project 2025 would also gut Obamacare, ripping away health care from millions. Simply put, Trump's Project 2025 would be devastating to Black America. But we can stop it by voting for Kamala Harris for president, because we are not going back.
I'm Kamala Harris, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Harris for president.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm-fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
You're invited to join KBLA Talk 1580 and the Empowerment Congress for a vice presidential debate watch party featuring Governor Tim Walz versus Senator J.D. Vance, Tuesday, October 1st at 6 p.m., immediately following the debate. Broadcast live here on KBLA Talk 1580. There will be a live panel discussion. Refreshments will be served and seating is limited, so RSVP right away at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
He's a paradigm pioneer.
And the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis Smiley and John Wood Jr., in case you've just tuned in, we have been unpacking his provocative piece for USA Today. Read it for yourself. It's called I'm a Republican, and I can't vote for Harris or Trump. I'm voting for Cornel West. He also hosts a fine program called The Reconstruction Project here on my home station in L.A. Of course, we're heard across the country, but here in L.A., KBLA Talk 1580 has a fine weekend program called The Reconstruction Project that you should check out if you've never heard his own program, but I'm pleased to have him on my show today, talking about this piece for USA Today. So let me pivot right quick here, watching my time. I'm still processing this, of course, in real time. I say now for the third time. It's just hard for me to imagine all the corruption in New York City, and this is the first one. You'd be like Brandon Johnson in Chicago, where we're also heard right now, being the first mayor in Chicago to be indicted. I mean, come on, this is Chicago. All the corruption, and so I'm trying to see my way through that. Number one, number two. Whether we're talking Mark Woody Thomas, a powerful elected official here in California, or Eric Adams in New York, and I'm not putting them in the same basket. My point, though, is that this is the Biden Justice Department going after so many of these high-ranking black officials. There's that lens through which to look at this. I'm not sure I quite understand that. But anyway, let me shut up. What's your initial read on this breaking news?
Well, I mean, I haven't had an opportunity to really dive into the details. My initial reaction, though, does mirror your own, Tab. I mean, my thing was, I saw the headline, the first.
Yeah.
I really, not that I had ever consciously asked myself the question, which New York mayors have been federally indicted or whatnot, but that just stunned me. I was like, the first out of all of the,
That's right.
all of the arguably shady folks. I mean, here's the thing. New York City, with the possible exception of Chicago, is historically the epicenter of machine politics among municipalities in American life. And, that very context historically tends to lend itself to tremendous possibilities for corruption, and of course, we've seen governors stepping in it in one way after one way and another over recent years. Cuomo, and I mean the list the list is relatively long on that front. So I think that the material question here is, I mean, accountability matters whether you're black or white, left or right, and we want accountability and justice to be served, but to be served impartially.
Yeah,
right?
but and the other thing is that the feds have said that they have found that he has been seeking and accepting improper valuable benefits since 2014. So he ran for mayor. The whole spotlight is on him. Y'all digging into his past, and none of this was discovered since 2014.
Right.
And now, on the eve of his re-election as mayor of New York City, you get this indictment. Like, for example, today, early this morning, they sent dozens of officers, dozens of federal officials, went to Gracie Mansion, the mayor's mansion, official residence in New York City. Dozens of feds went into Gracie Mansion to get his phone. Right. It does not take 12-plus people to walk in a house and get somebody's phone. It's all this extra stuff. It's the visual. It's the anyway. When we come forward, I'm told that Mayor Adams has now made a statement. Has spoken publicly about this indictment, and we'll give you some sound from Mayor Adams when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007, they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
John Wood Jr. and I were just talking about the fact that part of Eric Adams' downfall in New York may very well be consistently bragging and putting in people's face his swagger. He would use that word all the time. He would brag about his swag. And you put that swagger in people's faces, and you make yourself a target. You're the mayor. They coming after you anyway, black, white, or otherwise. Yeah. But when you walk around with that kind of bravado and that kind of swagger, I think that invites a certain kind of interrogation, does it not?
Yeah, well, I just said to you a moment ago, the nail that stands out gets hammered down, as the saying goes. I mean, now look, I mean, we're still in the realm of the speculative here, sure, as information comes out. But one,
hold that thought a second, Miles. I want to hear this. Mayor Adams, right quick. Yeah. I don't want my time to run out without giving the audience a chance to hear what he's had to say. Give it to me, Miles. Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank you for being here this morning, and I want to thank the supporters of all ethnic groups that are here, particularly the men and women of the clergy that's here, that have joined me here today. And we are not surprised. We expected this. This is not surprising to us at all. The actions that have unfolded over the last 10 months, the leaks, the commentary, the demonizing, this did not surprise us that we reached this day. And I ask New Yorkers to wait to hear our defense before making any judgments. In about 30 minutes, you're going to hear a story of the case that is in front of us. This story will come from the federal prosecutors. And I ask to wait and hear our side to this narrative.
There you hear Mayor Adams in New York City. Just want to give you a taste of what he had to say today in his defense. He's asking New Yorkers, and the rest of us for that matter, to wait until we hear his case. So this story is developing. We'll be covering it here, of course, as the story unfolds. I got a minute to go. I'll give it to John Wood Jr. Your final thoughts on what it means for you and for other fellow citizens right now in this election to try to find a way to vote their conscience. For you, that means voting as a black Republican for Cornel West.
Yes, sir. That is what it means for me. It doesn't have to be that way for everybody else, but I do want to highlight the importance of conscience itself in politics, because I think that we are at risk of sliding in full submersion into a way of thinking, and this is a way of thinking that Cornel West has pushed back against his entire career, that reduces politics to the mere mechanical and to the mere transactional. Politics may be about power, but the greatest power available to us is the power of the human soul, committed to justice and dignity for all people. And if the way in which we conduct and express ourselves in politics does not strengthen that way of being, strengthen that conscience, then we're going to see a society slide to the depths of moral depravity, and we can't have that in America.
The piece is called "I'm a Republican. I can't vote for Harris or Trump. I'm voting for Cornel West." It's in USA Today. I invite you once again to read the piece in its entirety for yourself. John Wood Jr., good to have you on, man. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Officials say it's time to prepare now as Hurricane Helene is forecast to make landfall in Florida's Big Bend region later today as a Category 4 storm. Helene is expected to bring life-threatening storm surge, damaging winds and flooding to much of the Sunshine State and the southeastern